The Nets and Wolves in an afternoon affair from the NBA with both teams wearing T-shirts today pregame that said, "With liberty and justice for all." They made up Monday's postponement following the fatal shooting by police of Dante Wright, and Brooklyn led wire to wire, led by Kevin Durant.
Durant, a three, you bet. Landry Shamet delivering the assist to Durant. 17 points now for Durant, who's 3 of 5 from downtown.
Ryan Rucco from the Yes Network. Durant scored 31 on just 15 shots. You have to wonder if he'll be in the lineup when the Nets play at Philadelphia tomorrow night in a game on ESPN, as Durant playing back-to-backs has not been a regularity this season. Also from the NBA, Paul George, 23 points in the opening half. Second half set to get started with the Clippers up at Indiana, 67-65. From baseball, it's the nightcap of a doubleheader, and you can see it on ESPN. Aaron Nola and Marcus Stroman dealing for the Mets and Phillies. They are scoreless in the third. The opener won by New York in extras 4-3. Jonathan BR produces the game winner there. Blue Jays all over the Yankees, 6-0 in the sixth inning. Hyunjin Ryu working on that shutout for Toronto. The Red Sox have won 7 straight games. They doubled the Twins 4-2. That was a makeup at a snowy Target Field. And from the NFL, the Broncos, Seahawks, and Bucks players say they will not report to voluntary off-season workouts next week. The teams citing health concerns related to COVID-19.
We're back on Wednesday, and it's the battle of the Eastern Conference supremacy. The Nets and the Sixers. We'll tell you who the best bet is to lose to the Lakers in the finals. Wednesday morning on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin on ESPN Radio.
Isn't this a sports show?
1999, Mike Maslowski.
Yep,
who I believe
linebacker.
came to the aforementioned high school that I played football at.
Yes.
One day, randomly, I don't know.
Went on to star in Monsters, Inc.
Almost entirely.
I broke Josh.
I can't do this radio show anymore.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
I simply can't. These are hostile work conditions. I can't be forced to work like this. I can't be forced to work like this. I am just sitting back in my chair staring at the sky, hoping that God's hand comes through the ceiling and takes me home.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
I think the reputation of this show, because of you, Rudy, has
increased?
No, I think, Rudy, that
Trending up?
the reputation of this show, because of you, has been sullied.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
For better or for worse, Rudy's back in the building. We had Tucker Franklin filling in yesterday, but Rudy's back on the horse and ready to ruin the show again with jokes like that one.
Yeah, ruin, make better.
I don't want to be mean to Rudy today because Rudy is dealing with a significant sports loss. We'll get to, we can at least touch on that right now. R.I.P. R.I.P. to Jamal Murray. Like Eloy Jimenez, always in our hearts forever.
Yep.
Gone but not forgotten. But just, it's a sports injury.
not a full perishing, but
What's the difference?
But really, that's a great point, Rudy. What is the difference? Rudy's back. I'm here. Beards is here. It's Seth Keysor Tuesday. We'll talk to him coming up at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. You can watch the show, interact with the show, and all the places that you usually can, specifically the Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Am I going to be able to interact with the computer over here? TBD. We're gonna figure it out as we go.
Only God knows at this point.
I'm not sure God would want anything to do with this computer running Windows 8 over here. I just don't know. We'll get it figured out as we continue over the course of tonight's show. We'll talk a lot of Chiefs with Seth. I know he tweeted this out earlier today. He is going to go through a bunch, if not all, of the top offensive tackle prospects that may or may not be there for the Chiefs at 31. I think that's going to be pretty interesting because I want to know what Seth's conclusion ends up being. Not just splitting hairs between Samuel Cosby and Liam Eichenberg. Did I call him Samuel Cosby?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to. Samuel Cosby or Liam Eichenberg. That I can give or take it, right? We're going to split hairs on draft prospects, and 3 years down the line, we're going to say, oh, how is that team so stupid to take that guy over that guy? But in reality, in exact science, et cetera, et cetera. What I am really interested to find out is what Seth ends up thinking about positional value and the crop of guys at 31 versus who might be there at 63 versus are they going to have to trade up for one of the top two guys? I just think that moving target will be really interesting. So I'm looking forward to talking to Seth about all that coming up here in about an hour. The thing at the moment, though, that's sort of news of the day, and frankly, a thing that we didn't talk about yesterday, and, honestly, I feel like we missed the mark a little bit by not sort of starting in this space with this story, because it's important and, something that I think that we as a show are pretty well equipped to handle. And, it's a collision point between sports and entertainment in a way that usually we lock on to, and sports in the real world in a way that we usually lock on to. And we failed to even so much as mention it yesterday, and I do feel bad about that. So I want to start the show fixing that error from yesterday. Kevin James is going to star as Sean Payton in an upcoming film. Kevin James, whose work you may know from Paul Blart Mall Cop
and Hitch
and Paul Blart Mall Cop 2, and
Not
probably
Hitch 2.
eventually Paul Blart Mall Cop 3.
Kings of Queens.
I think it's just King. I think it's
the King of Queens.
King singular.
Yeah, the King of Queens.
Oh wow, does that take place in the city in New York by the same name?
No, actually, San Francisco. Weirdly enough.
Here's the thing, Rudy. I need an honest answer to that because I've never.
I mean, I assume so.
Right?
I've seen the show. I've seen many episodes
for the show. That was it.
It was one of those shows that was like just would rerun on like
how many
TBS.
episodes? How many episodes do you think aired
it
of
was
that
for
show?
a while. I bet it was close to 200. It was on for a minute.
It was probably like a mini series, right? Like 8 episodes.
What was
They
your
just
what
kept
was
replaying?
What
them
was your
forever?
guess, Rudy?
I'll say 180.
207.
Whew.
You were very close.
Yeah, figured it'd been around for 7-ish seasons.
Yeah,
maybe
they're in Queens, New York.
That checks out.
I literally did not. I never put those pieces together.
I've seen a decent amount of the episodes. I don't know if I've seen like everyone, but it's one of those shows that was always on repeat. So especially like during the summer when there's nothing on TV, you just like you end up in those weird like 2 o'clock in a June afternoon, when you're not used to being home, and all of a sudden you're home and you have to watch the TV that's not usually on, or that you don't usually come across because you're at school. That's one of those shows. It was like an hour of Seinfeld, an hour of The King of Queens, maybe an hour of Everybody Loves Raymond.
Everybody Loves Raymond. That's definitely on my radar.
It's a
for
great
sure.
show.
So they don't bear a significant resemblance to one another. Like, I mean, they're both sort of averagely built, middle-aged white dudes, but that is
Middle-aged
more or
white guy
less.
is all you need there.
That-
That's the only.
You
hit
put on
that.
a visor and a headset.
You're good.
You're Sean Payton. But did you guys see what the premise is? Because here's the thing. The headline
Yeah.
made me go, this sucks. I hate this. This sucks. The premise,
It's intriguing.
guys,
It's intriguing.
I might unironically want to watch this film called Home Team. It's from the Sporting News here via Peter King.
It's sure intriguing.
Kevin James is going to play Saints coach Sean Payton in a Netflix movie called Home Team. The movie is based on when Payton was suspended in 2012 and coached his son's 6th grade football team. Now, if I had to put money on it, I would bet that this is not good. But
Don't judge a book by its cover, Josh.
I'm gonna crack the door open. I'm just gonna crack the door open to the possibility on the other side of that door that maybe this movie isn't terrible. Because the idea of Super Bowl winning head coach, closer to his glory days than he is now, going from coaching Drew Brees to coaching his kids' peewee team. I think if the energy just has to be basically the energy of that Peyton Manning commercial, where he's or the SNL sketch that was half sketch,
sketch.
half skit. The SNL skit where he's
Follow up
just
to Hitch.
that's Hitch 2, but the S is a 2. It's flipped
Yeah.
around. Where he's just absolutely ruining children with footballs. Like that's
Yes.
funny. Aspen on Twitch says this movie has Mighty Ducks vibes.
Now I'm interested.
It also, here's the thing. Do you know why this movie is getting made? This just clicked for me. Do you know why this movie got greenlit by Netflix?
Oh, it's a Netflix movie? I didn't
Netflix
see.
movie.
Okay, then it's going to be good. It's got Netflix money.
Well, I wouldn't-
Budget's not an issue.
do you know why this movie is happening, though?
I don't.
Ted Lasso.
That
I'll
kinda
tell
makes
you
sense.
what. A college football, a charming college football coach going to go coach European soccer. The closest way I think you could rip that off is by taking it to NFL head coach coaches 6th grade football. I think it probably if I'm right, if that read of mine is correct, then I think I am probably even more lukewarm on the idea of this movie. Because I feel like I'm still only through 5 episodes of Ted Lasso, and it's been so good. I just haven't watched anything in the last several days. I don't think that Kevin James is going to be able to be that level of charming.
Oof, the insults.
The disrespect, some would say. Yeah.
James. Woof.
Jason Sudeikis has a very natural, charismatic likability.
Somebody that's clearly never saw Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Well, here's the thing. The reason that I'm so confident that Kevin James is not as charming as Jason Sudeikis is because I have, in fact, seen Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Did you watch Here Comes the Boom?
I did not. Did
Have
you watch?
seen Hitch?
No. Maybe? Is that the one with Will Smith?
Yes.
So Here
Then
Comes
yes,
the Boom
I don't remember him being in that at all, though.
is about a high school biology teacher who looks to become a successful mixed martial art
And he's got
martial
lung
arts
cancer,
fighter
so he starts making
in an
meth.
effort to raise money to prevent an extracurricular activities from being axed at his cash-strapped school. This is basically the same movie.
Well, no, that movie is freaking whitewashed Nacho Libre, is what that sounds like.
Yes.
Right?
Well, wasn't Nacho Libre with Jack Black kind
Yeah.
of already whitewashed Nacho Libre?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But at least the supporting cast was at least not that I remember.
No, I think you're right.
I almost said Kevin Black. Jack Black.
Yeah.
Kevin Black. Whew, there's a character for you.
Is that the name of an actual person?
No, but like a mix of
probably
Kevin
is.
James and Jack Black.
I feel like there is somebody named Kevin Black.
Well, it
Maybe
could be.
not. I mean,
It
like,
certainly could be.
well, holy bleep. I googled Kevin Black. You know who somebody named Kevin Black? Wrestling coach. The Victory School of Wrestling. I wonder if he's got. I hope there's not just like a big scandal here that I gotta.
Did you catch his performance in Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation?
Which one?
Well, he was in all
No,
of
which
them.
actor? Kevin James.
Oh, Kevin James. Yeah.
I saw the first Hotel Transylvania in
He's Frankenstein.
theaters. I don't think I saw 2 or 3 or 4 or
I mean,
5
he's
or
in all
6 or
3 of
7
them.
or 8.
What about Grown Ups?
Never saw Grown Ups.
I saw the sequel.
Missing out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I believe that's one of the lower rated like Rotten Tomatoes.
It's not good.
What were the circumstances that had you? Because here's the thing, you're not like really a I'll watch the sequel without having seen the first movie.
Yeah.
Bleep it all kind of guy.
I went with a friend, and it was just kind of like a let's go see a movie thing, and that was like the only one that had the showtime that was near when we were available to do it.
Don't look it up. I want you guys to play the Rotten Tomatoes game with me here. Do not look it up. The rule is you got to get within 10%. We'll go we'll go audience and critics. Beards, don't look over my shoulder at the camera. No peeking. No peeking. It's not up yet for some reason. It's not loading.
That's okay.
So we'll see if this actually, you know what? We'll see if we get there. So the Rotten Tomatoes game goes like this. You're going from 0 to 100%. You say a percentage, and it needs to be within 10 total percentage points of that spot. I'm giving you a pretty wide net. I think in reality I might have actually lowered it down to 5 because I give you 5 in each direction.
I do. Before I play this game, I want to give you a little fun fact that I found a little Kevin James Marvel Cinematic Universe thing here. So in The King of Queens, he was Doug Heffernan. Like that was the character. Prior to King of Queens, he was on in episodes here and there throughout Everybody Loves Raymond as Doug Heffernan. But
King of Queens is a spinoff?
But Doug Heffernan made his debut on The Cosby Show.
What? So The Cosby Show, Everybody Loves Raymond, and King of Queens is all in one universe?
Sorry, I got this mixed up. It did start on Everybody Loves Raymond's where Doug Heffernan started. He made an appearance on the episode Judgment Day in 1998 as Doug Heffernan on The Cosby Show.
I bet that episode title and context, that would go very different in 2021.
And then after that, started up King of Queens.
Where's the Marvel tie-in here?
Well, it's just a cinematic universe, not like actual Marvel.
It's the KJC.
It's the Kevin James cinematic universe. Or the Doug Heffernan cinematic universe.
That does imply that all those are in the same universe.
Well, he was Doug Heffernan in 3 different shows. I think they're all in the same universe.
No, that's what I'm saying. That implies they're all in the same universe.
Oh, yeah.
Although, now that I'm thinking about it, it's not that crazy. It's not like you need a bunch of other universes to...
Boy. I missed another one. He was in Becker. Doug Heffernan was in an episode of Becker.
Wow. What?
So Becker was in the same universe as all those other ones.
I don't know if Rotten Tomatoes is struggling, if our internet is struggling. So I want to give you guys Grown Ups 1 and Grown Ups 2.
Might be both.
But it is a tough go of it right now. I have Grown Ups 2 up on Rotten Tomatoes. Need the audience score and the critic score for Grown Ups 2. I'm going to say you guys get a total of a 10% wiggle room, but it's 5% either direction. Let's start with the audience score.
I feel like the audience will definitely like it more than the critics, because you'll have parents that are like, "Oh yeah, it was nice." Blah blah blah.
It was nice. You think this is a nice film?
Yeah, I think parents will say that. I'm gonna say the audience was probably about 42%.
Beards. Audience score for Grown Ups 2.
I'm not doing my bit because I have seen this movie.
That's fine.
Audience score
nail
28.
this. Audience score?
Yes.
For Grown Ups 2 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
53%.
That's way too much.
That feels right to me.
Unbelievably
again,
way too much.
Because again, it's a movie that I think a lot of parents would be like, yeah, like it was, like it's Adam Sandler. I think there's a lot of parents that are like, yeah, it's a good movie. And then there's a lot of other people like, no, it's very bad.
It's really
very
terrible. Audience score, critic score on the tomato
off.
meter.
Critics, I think, is going to be like 27.
Beards, critic score for Grown Ups 2.
0. No, I'll go 12.
Beards is on the board, 8%
Oh.
critics.
Yeah, that feels right, though. It definitely felt like one where the audience was going to like it more than the critics would.
Well, let's go. You know, the sequel's never as good as the original, right? We all know
Of
this.
course.
We all know this. This has
I saw
to be
the original
true.
in theaters. My uncle took me.
This clearly had to be a pretty, decent film to get a second go around. What did the audience think of Grown Ups 1?
They shot an arrow up into the air, and everybody just had to like stand there. And it was like whoever ran away first was the chicken, and then the arrow went through. I forget which one of Adam Sandler's actors' friends.
Let's
further
really
goes through,
focus on
but
the
yeah.
game that we're playing. Audience score.
Audience.
Grown Ups 1.
Grown Ups 1. So Grown Ups 2 was 53.
Sure.
I'm going to say Grown Ups 1 was a little bit higher. I'm going to say it was a 61.
Beards?
I'm debating if I want to.
You can also Price is Right this game if you really are trying to cut Rudy up. But you guys only get a 5% wiggle
70.
room. Rudy said 61. Beards said 70. Audience score for Grown Ups 1. 62. 250,000 ratings. Rudy has it
just
nearly on the
missed it.
nose.
Just missed it. I mean,
But the critics.
Josh was even giving you Beards like a clue.
A
Like, hey,
hint.
just go one up.
Grown Ups, among critics, clearly this is a movie they're looking for Oscars, right? They're hunting for awards. What did critics think of Grown Ups 1? Remembering that Grown Ups 2 got us, what, a spicy 8, I think?
Yeah. I'm going to say Grown Ups 1 was about I'm going to say it was a nice 29%.
Beards?
Give me a 35.
Shout out to Alex Smith one time. That's an 11.
Wow.
So it was better.
That's
I liked it more.
That by a factor of 3 rotten percentage points. All right, Paul Blart Mall Cop 1.
99. Easy.
Give me both of them back to back. Give me your audience and your critic score for Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Audience 100%, critics 99.
Beards.
It's a masterpiece.
Paul Blart Mall Cop 1.
Well, how did you phrase it?
That's
You,
how.
all the letters were there. The order was just absolutely unsalvageable.
I just realized we need this for this game.
That's probably true.
Paul Blart Mall Cop
Audience
1.
score.
Audience score.
And critic score. Just give me 2 numbers.
69.
And
420.
I feel like I'm losing
So I
you
think
guys
that's
on this game.
80% because it's 420.
43% audience score, 34% critic score. But what about the squeakquel?
People don't understand great cinema.
Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. No subtitle. Just called Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Return to the Blart. Return of the Blart.
Blartier than ever. Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. Rip a Blart.
Sequel's always a little bit worse, so I'll say 90% audience, 89% critics.
Beards, audience, and audience critics.
Audience, I'll go. What was the first one
I don't
for
know.
audience? Okay.
43.
I think it was like 40.
37.
Oh,
I noticed.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure, but I'll do it.
You went what, 37?
Yeah.
What about your critic score?
2.
Beards crushing this game, 33 and 5. Woo! Beards, absolute. That's 3 points. That's 3 points for Beards in this game, 0 for Rudy, and really we've all lost.
I say I nailed Grown Ups 2.
I'm sorry, that's true.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Beards
nailed
won that
Grown
one.
Ups 2.
Beards won that one 3-1. Is everything
My
in competition?
respect.
5% for Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Critics don't understand cinema.
I love the Rotten Tomatoes game, man. A game that I invented. I wonder if Kevin James. Hold on, I'm gonna go ahead and click Kevin James's
Yeah, I want to know what his like.
Rotten Tomatoes page here and just see if he's got like an average score.
Yeah, like if there's something that really sticks out, because like.
Have you seen Hitch?
I don't remember anything
Does
about
he-
Hitch
does
other
he
than that
get
Will
credit-
Smith was like a drunk
that's-
superhero.
Wait,
Nope, that's not Hitch.
That's Hitchcock.
that's
Yes.
it. Yeah.
That's what I asked if it was one with Will Smith.
Well, Will Smith
that's a
is
different one.
Is he in
also in
both
it. Yes.
Oh, no, wait, that's Hancock.
Hancock.
Yeah,
It's-
Hancock.
I didn't see
it's-
that movie.
It's Hitch and Hancock.
I remember Hancock vaguely. I've
Yeah,
never seen Hitch.
Will Smith is a drunken superhero
in
who-
Hancock.
in Hancock.
There is
But
Hitchcock
in
is
Hitch,
different.
he's a drunken romance hero.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about how that is.
It's basically the exact same character, just one of them.
Just one can fly.
Yeah, and the other is better at picking up women.
I've opened a
Metaphorically speaking.
Yes,
Yeah,
like the
'cause
one,
Hitchcock
because
can
the
be better at
guy,
picking them up.
because Hancock can easily pick them up, just not like with love.
Alex Hitchens, Will Smith, is a professional, quote, date doctor, unquote, who coaches other men in the art of wooing women with the main focus of having genuine long-term relationships. He is very successful at what he does, says Wikipedia's summary of this film.
He is.
I'm not going to keep reading
very
on,
good.
but I bet he's great at setting up other people's relationships, but his love life, not as perfect as you'd think.
No, but he meets somebody. Think Halle Berry was in that?
No. I can't remember who it is.
Eva Mendes.
There you go.
Same person.
Don't think that's true.
No.
Don't think
No.
that's true.
It's been such a long time since I've seen that movie. Oh, yeah. I know Eva Mendes now.
Kevin James is one of the people in the movie that he helped set up with somebody.
Do you think that Kevin? Oh, okay, this is the end of the bit. So Kevin James was in Monster House, apparently. That was his highest rated Rotten Tomatoes appearance,
Does it have his TV shows?
with 75%.
Or is it only movies?
75% is not a great highest Rotten Tomatoes rating for a movie you were in, especially whenever
No.
you physically were not in it.
That's a passing grade.
But that's his best one, and he wasn't physically in it. His lowest rated Rotten Tomatoes film, you might say, well, it literally has to be Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. It was like 5%. I would introduce you to a Netflix original film called True Memoirs of an International Assassin, where Kevin James is
Netflix
the
original.
titular international assassin, it seems. The tomato meter from 9 reviews among critics.
See, that's the problem. Only 9 people checked it out. You need at least 10.
0%.
I've seen that movie, by the way.
What?
Yeah.
I
Review fast now.
think
Oh,
I have.
it was fine.
Well,
Like, it did its job. It was semi-entertaining, and that was it. That's all I remember from that movie.
You wouldn't have given it a 0, though.
No.
Now, here's his TV shows.
I mean, do we have to explain how Rotten Tomatoes works real quick?
No.
Okay.
83% of the audience like The King of Queens, which is how he's been able to survive a 0% on a Netflix original. That obviously paid him a lot of money.
Here, I'm
You
going
know how
to
much
read
money that he's probably made? Oh, boy.
Here are the critic scores from just Kevin James. I'm not going to read them all. Just Kevin James critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes, okay? 71. I'm going the newest to oldest. 71, 62, 27, 0, 24, 17, 5, 55, 8, 45, 41, 14, 24, 11, 34, 15, 22.
Are these like box scores from a game?
75.
Wow, that was a good game.
Hey guys, what do you think? And 51st Dates 45. What do you think the critic score for Hitch was? Last one.
Critics, critics don't like pickup shows like that. It's like 44.
I'll give it a 67 because it's Hitch. It's a good movie. And the critics, I know, are going to be a little less.
Nah, critics don't.
67, you think, Beards?
Yeah.
What if I told you that critics gave it a 69%?
Nice.
Good for
Did
them.
they actually?
They sure did.
Nice.
Do you want to know what Kevin James'
a good score.
net worth is?
Oh, I can look at the box office intakes from all these, but yeah, I'd love to know.
You got to guess. You and Beard.
Yeah.
Got guesses?
What is this from CelebrityNetworth.com?
It's from Distractify.com.
Sure.
Everyone says
So
Celebrity Network
it's net
also
worth,
has the same amount. Yeah.
It's net worth, not like liquid income,
Yeah,
but it's
net
like
worth. Yeah.
not liquid assets.
net worth.
I'm gonna say $147 million. Beards?
Kevin James' net worth?
Yep. Same thing we've been talking about last 30 seconds or so.
68 million.
100 million on the dot.
Wow.
This is pretty good.
February 8th, 2021. Kevin James buys $14 million oceanfront mansion in South Los Angeles.
Just with a wheelbarrow full of cash. The wheelbarrow is just labeled Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
You got it for less than the 15.95 million it was originally listed at.
And he can find the deal. Good for him.
18,906 square feet.
That man's going to play Sean Payton in a Netflix documentary. That's how he got there, in case you were wondering.
Oof, this house. It was a YouTube video. Oh, boy.
You know it's a good house when they have a YouTube video of it.
Kevin's salary per episode on The King of Queens was $300,000. For the final seasons, he earned $400 per episode.
Wow.
Whew. He's earned north of $50 million on syndication deals to date off that show.
Anybody have a King of Queens pun that we can go to break on? It's like King of Green, King of Sheesh, but none of them are like that. Need something better. What was the name of that character again? His character in King of Queens?
Oh, Dan Heffernan.
No, I don't. What, do you guys want to be funny for, till we go to break for once? It's tough, isn't it? It's lonely on this island. That music just taunts you, because we can't, I'm not going to just say whenever we come back, we'll talk about the NFL
Listen, we got
vaccination
21
policy.
more minutes of this music.
I'm not going to sit here for 21 more minutes of us trying to find one joke about Kevin James. You know what, though? Actually, I think there's something poetic about the fact that we, for 5 straight minutes, could not think of one funny thing to say about Kevin James, because he hasn't done one funny thing on any screen of any size in a very long time. So actually, I think we nailed it. There went the boom.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
I have a response to your response. I thought about tweeting the response, but I forgot. So now I'm going to give you a verbal response to your tweet.
To this tweet?
To your tweet. Your
About
quote
the
tweet.
sheep?
About the why was it compared to a kangaroo?
Who is on? Don't spoil. I haven't read it yet, Rudy.
You just asked the question.
I'm gonna read it. I said I was gonna read it, and
You
then Beers wanted
literally
to play
just
the
asked
thing.
the question.
I asked if you saw the tweet, and you guys said yes, and I said okay, I'm gonna read it.
And then I said I'm going to give you a response, and then you asked a response to what? And so I
to
answered
my
the question.
tweet about the
Yes.
sheep.
If you didn't want the answer, don't ask the question.
Don't give away the punchline.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Do either of you remember what that was about? Or no, it was the weight.
It was the sheep that they found in Australia, and they like shaved all of its fur off,
Yes.
or sheared its fur off, and it weighed as much as a kangaroo.
Like half a kangaroo
Yeah.
or two kangaroo. It was some fractional
of
kangaroo,
a kangaroo.
I think.
It weighed blank, X amount of a kangaroo.
Yes, it was a
Yeah.
kangaroo-based measurement. Boy, that liner made me mad without even remembering what it was about. That was just absolutely unlistenable. It'd be
So
like me
good.
saying, have you seen? It would have been like me saying, hey, did you guys see what Kevin James is gonna do? And you're like, yeah, whenever he plays Sean Payton, and the season that he went and was suspended and coached football for his kids team.
That's happening?
I'd be like, well, yeah, Rudy, you blew the whole thing. It's all out now. It's all out there. But we did all right. We got there. Holy smokes. Well, you want to talk about something sort of serious, but I'm not going to make it that serious. We're going to get through it pretty cleanly, I think.
Is it going to hurt me?
No.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Tom Pelissero was the first one to tweet this earlier today. I think this is pretty interesting and also pretty simple, and it's going to make some people mad. And that, well, you know what? You can come through the Twitch chat, I guess. Tom Pelissero tweeted, the NFL informed clubs today that any team employee who refuses a COVID-19 vaccination without, quote, bona fide medical or religious ground will be barred from Tier 1 or Tier 2 status and thus have restricted access within the team facility and not work directly with players per sources. He has the full NFL memo, which also says teams must report weekly the number of employees who are vaccinated as conversations with the NFLPA continue on the thresholds at which protocols on testing, PPE, travel, etc. can be relaxed. Discussions continue between the NFL and NFLPA about what form offseason programs will take, with scheduled a Monday start. Union one's all virtual and has urged players to boycott otherwise. Everything prior to training camp is voluntary, other than one mandatory minicamp in June. There's also some news on that front. We'll circle back on that in a second. The main thing here is the NFL is saying, unless you've got a very specific, legitimate reason, you are not going to get Tier 1 or Tier 2 status of clearance in your facilities with your team if you are saying, I will not get the COVID-19 vaccination. I understand if your first thought is, do I like that this company can force its employees to have some sort of like medical thing? I'm using a very vague term in this case. Mm-hmm. I would understand if you have a knee-jerk reaction to questioning that. Also, the NFL is a private company, and you can do it at once in that regard. But whatever. I actually don't want to fully invalidate maybe your first kind of little, maybe making a kind of scrunching your nose up a little bit. Here's the thing. One, I'm not surprised that the NFL is going this direction because do you remember last year? We had a game every single night of the week over the course of the season.
Yep.
There were plexiglass panes put up in locker rooms, strict mask protocols. You had games where you lost Cam Newton. You had games where you were afraid that the Chiefs might have had a might not have hurt in retrospect. You may have had a COVID outbreak right before the Super Bowl, even as the league made it all the way there.
Maybe could have used that extra week.
Could have maybe pushed it back some. I don't know. I don't know how long it takes for an Achilles to heal, but maybe we could have given Eric Fisher a cyborg leg.
Technology changes fast.
The NFL went through so much pain to get this season put out there last year, they were deadly efficient. But they went through so many stressing factors to make that season happen last year. They now have an easier way to get everything back on track and to fill out stadiums. The Bills have said, hey, we're planning on opening at full capacity, but you got to be vaccinated before you can come in here because that's how we're going to refill these stadiums.
Yep.
So I'm not surprised that the NFL is doing it that way. And also, in part, because there is no such thing as we had the COVID-19 reserve list last year. There is no polio/smallpox reserve list because we don't have to worry about that anymore because vaccines, because of medical advancements. The NFL is not going to invite all of the issues of a pandemic upon them voluntarily for a second consecutive season. Also, you've got to, if you're going to go to at least a public university, you have to be caught up on a certain number of shots. The military right now,
all that stuff.
The military right now is dealing with a large chunk of, I can't remember, I think it was specifically one unit of the military was had 40% of people decline the COVID test, even though a bunch of other vaccines and stuff are mandatory to enter the service. But right now, because it's only still in emergency output mode or whatever for the COVID vaccine, it hasn't gone through all of those steps yet to get there. It's going to get there because we don't want to have to deal with this forever. And there were a couple of, I saw a couple of people, first of all, if you just think, oh, this is garbage or whatever, it's a private company making a choice to make sure its workforce is as healthy as possible. Mm-hmm. The other thing is somebody said, all right, well, if you get vaccinated, why do you care if I do or not? And I actually think that it's a question worth answering. One is that as COVID has been spreading, it keeps developing other variants. And if your body shuts down the version that you get, you can't be the host of a mutation that then goes out where another variant of it now is spreading, and maybe the vaccine doesn't end up being effective against that, but it mutated with you. It would be nice to not have to deal with that. So please do get vaccinated. The other thing, though, is there will be people who for rightly or wrongly feel like they cannot get the vaccine but might actually want to. This is super duper into the weeds, but girlfriend Renee back years ago had a very severe egg allergy. And I actually think upon further research, a bunch of she wasn't getting the flu shots because there was the fear of is there going to be some sort of reaction here? She's no longer allergic to eggs. Her allergies are very strange and not important or going to be the remainder of this radio segment. But if you have a legitimate medical reason that you will say, I don't think that I can do this, or your doctor says, hey, you actually should not get this. If everyone around you has been vaccinated, they're not going to give it to you. And that's great. It's also how you have some of these now archaic sounding viruses just sort of disappear from our lives and exist only in labs. It's because the vaccine spread out far enough people got it, that there was nowhere for the virus to go, and so it went away. Mm-hmm. That, ideally, is the goal here. I don't think any of that is all that complicated. And again, if you want to get, the NFL's not going to let Josh Allen still trying to figure out all of the information, all the latest science on this.
I mean, if he wants to, though, hey, go ahead, Josh Allen. Tom Brady, maybe you want to just set out the year
that would
as well.
Be good, actually.
Hey.
Yeah, I would actually appreciate that. The NFL's not going to let Josh Allen being kind of touch and go on the vax be a thing that completely derails their season. It's just simply not going to happen. They're not going to let him not wanting to get the vaccine be something that eventually knocks him out with COVID. And now all these protocols have to be back in place because he and some defensive end ended up having contact and neither of them wanted to get the shot. Vaccines are one of the most remarkable biological advancements that we've had over the last few hundred years. They've, in some form or another, been around for longer. Did you know, I learned this, that George Washington, I think it was measles, it might have been smallpox, I think it was smallpox, mandated that the army all get smallpox inoculations, which was a much grosser system. You guys ever watch the John Adams HBO series?
I'm not.
No.
There's a scene in there that is a smallpox inoculation sort of situation where what you do is you get a little bit of somebody's smallpox and you poke that smallpox right into your body And then your body is like, oh, no, we've had smallpox, sort of, and we can defend it. That's the concept of vaccines, generally speaking.
Yeah.
We're just much better at doing that now. And also, actually, with the 2-shot vaccines, they're mRNA vaccines, which is teaching your body how to build the protein that fights the protein that contains the virus. I'm like 90% sure I got that mostly right. Super duper interesting.
Almost entirely correct.
I've read about that as a hobby, not necessarily as a messenger on that front. So take that for what you will. I did okay in high school biology and college chemistry, but I had one class at each level.
Almost entirely a doctor.
I would say not, actually. There will be some headaches that come of this for the NFL, and I think it'll be interesting to see. Some linebacker from somewhere, I didn't recognize, I think it was a Broncos linebacker, tweeted about how like he'll get it, but he wasn't gonna, he's doing it for his team or whatever, not because of a planned pandemic. And I read that and now that is an opinion that is kind of startling. But if he's going to get the shot, then I guess we're one person closer to having everybody vaccinated if he does actually get it. I don't know. We'll see. There could be some interesting things that come out of it, but I don't think anyone should be surprised that the NFL is going to, with the same fervor they said, hey, all you Broncos quarterbacks that had your masks below your nose and were too close to each other that one week, you're going to have to go start a receiver at quarterback this week because we're not effing around here. The NFL is just bringing that same energy into this, and you say wearing a mask is different than getting a shot. I mean, that's true. We also have dealt with a lot of people that don't want to wear a mask. So,
very true.
We're gonna have some general disagreements, I guess, on the value of science in our world, and that's gonna be a thing that we have to deal with for a while. And that bums me out, but it's probably just a part of the equation at this point.
2 + 2 doesn't have to equal 4.
It can equal whatever you want if you think about it. If you work hard enough, if you believe.
That's the American dream.
Eat enough carrots and whatever somebody tweeted about one time that I'm not going to engage with. That sounds me pulling a parachute and floating off of something else. It'll be interesting to see what pops up from it, but I don't think you should be surprised by the NFL saying, all right, here's our path back to normal, and it's everybody getting the vaccine because it's safe, effective, and going to get us there. Makes a lot of sense. Considering all the hoops they jumped through last year, this is a singular, much easier to hop through hoop that's going to get us back to football. So I don't think you should be surprised by that.
With full stadiums, and that's the key to all this.
Yeah.
It's having stadiums full so that teams can make money so that we don't have salary caps that all of a sudden drop by $20-30 million.
That's right.
So,
if you're on the fence about getting the vaccine, you remember, you could raise the salary cap in the NFL.
Which will help the Chiefs.
Which will help the Chiefs pay
win
Patrick Mahomes.
Super Bowl. You want the Chiefs to win a Super Bowl? Get your shot.
Get the shot.
It's as simple as that.
It's just science.
For the first time in maybe the history of your life, you can actively do something to help the Chiefs win a Super Bowl. Let's just get a shot.
I think also listening
shots,
to this show also helps the Chiefs in the Super Bowl because you boost our reach, and then it's more likely that Brett Veach will hear all of my good ideas and then start using them. So it's slightly
running back in the first round.
Yeah, he didn't call me on that one. He did not call me on that one.
In his defense, he did draft basically a wide receiver.
Brett Veach in that instance had taken 2 shots. They just weren't medical. They were Everclear. And then I needed some medicine after. I needed the cure for that draft pick. Now I'm sad. There is some other interesting stuff going on around the NFL. We might talk about that. We might talk more about Kevin James. I don't know, man. We'll figure it out.
At JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, at Not That Rudy, at Sports Radio 810. Just do it already. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco
This is a very theologically woke sports show.
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I'm going to take this endorsement from Bad News I Tried on Twitch, who said, very close. It attacks the spike protein that the virus uses to attack the cell, the way I understand it. I don't have any reason to believe that Bad News I Tried is a doctor, but
He's almost entirely a doctor.
It sounds pretty reasonable, and I'm going to take that as a partial win. I don't know where this is going to end up getting us. I don't know if this is going to end up being a huge deal, if they're going to get this worked out. But the Broncos, Seahawks, and Buccaneers have all put out various statements through the NFLPA saying that they are not going to go to the voluntary in-person workouts, the way I understand it. They want all that stuff to be virtual, and teams want it to be in person. And it's not, as I read earlier, not mandatory until training camp, minus like a week of mandatory mini camps. It's all voluntary, but it's also not really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I think, has Chris Jones been at voluntary mini camp the last, like, 3 years? I feel like it's kind of the place where you, like, float a contract holdout, basically.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get fined for not being there like you would for missing days of training camp. So this is definitely a more sort of hostile organized boycott than we've seen from stuff like this in a little bit. And ultimately, I wonder if every team gets there. I don't expect the Chiefs to be first on this, but if it does continue to snowball, I don't expect them to be last either. I think the Chiefs love it right in the middle of basically every statement, everything possible, because you can just kind of get clumped in with everybody else.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see if it does snowball to where pretty much every team goes, yeah, we're not going to come to in-person voluntary OTAs. We want all this to be virtual. I think it's the safest this way. Could give everybody more chances to get vaccinated before that time. If the NFL handles all that, it's a little bit tougher of a sell for me, but I understand them when they do that. Also, last year they got through all of that virtually, and it's like they're all saying, it all went well last year. The quality of play was better than ever by almost every measure, and we want to do it this way now. So I'll be interested to see how much of it is specifically COVID-related, how much it snowballs, where it goes from here. Something to keep an eye on, not necessarily life-changing in the moment. What is life-changing, though? The fact that Seth Keysor is next.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus.
Now it's time for very serious football talk with the man who met his wife on a blind date, chaperoned by his parents.
They actually came along on the first date with us. That was I rode in the back seat. I was 22.
The man who needs to take a minute to remember the names of all of his children.
Do all of your kids have the same first letter?
No, actually. Let me think. Do any of them? Tucker, Mason, Cole, Isabel, and Lucas.
The man who can defend you in court, but will probably choose not to.
I'll cop to this on a public setting right now. I am an aggressive cuddler in a consensual sense.
Comma, officer.
Good grief, he's a pastor too? When does this guy sleep?
You will find Seth Keysor everywhere except for in his or your bed, because not only does he not sleep, he's also a faithful husband. So that's important.
It's Seth Keysor of The Athletic on Almost Entirely Sports.
It's a Tuesday with the NFL draft just around the corner, although it feels like we've gone around a lot of corners, and there's still a couple more corners to go, and maybe it's actually a NASCAR racetrack. We'll talk about all that right here, right now, with Seth Keysor of the Chief of the North newsletter at mnchiefsfan.substack.com, and of The Athletic, and of the Times Arts podcast, with myself and him and Nate Taylor. An episode of that will be coming out tomorrow at some point. Seth, how are you feeling right now at this point in the draft, potentially draft fatigue category?
You know, for me, draft fatigue doesn't ever really set in because I tend to just kind of skip around completely oblivious to the draft most of the year.
Right.
And then, so now this time of year, I approach the draft for the first time. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Look at all this content. Whereas everyone else is like, I've been looking at this content for months.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited. And I'm actually, for the first time in a couple of years, I think I might dive in a little more head first into some draft content. I only have like 2 weeks to do it, but I've got kind of a project in mind. And normally I just look at a couple of draft crushes. And this year I think I might kind of do a deep dive on a single position.
I like this a lot. You tweeted about this just a little while ago at Real I'm in Chiefs fan on Twitter earlier today. And you were asking for tackle prospects because you want to try to go through, kind of skim the surface maybe on a bunch of those guys, and then do the thing that I love more than anything else in sports coverage, rank them. Oh, I love a ranking. Ranking just really, it's the only good content.
Well, and one good thing about having a newsletter that I can make anything I want, subscription only, is I can guarantee you some of the stuff that I write will be unlocked. You know, a few of the reviews for the various linemen. One thing I guarantee you I'm going to lock is the rankings, because draft Twitter is not a forgiving place. And I have no desire to get caught up in any of those, I can't believe that you ranked this tackle 3 spots below this tackle. You should lay under a train. You know, like, I don't need that in my life.
No.
And so I'm excited. But yeah, offensive tackle is, and I wrote about this today, actually, on The Athletic, talking about the state of the Chiefs, kind of some draft needs, where they kind of sit overall after free agency. And I kind of talk about how with the moves they've made, and, you know, there's some fans who are disappointed about certain things. With the moves they've made it to where the only glaring need, and some people might disagree with this, but I believe it, the only glaring need they have, and by glaring, I mean like, you know those flashlights that are more like searchlights that can like light up a hill 5 miles away?
Yeah.
It's that kind of glaring need is left tackle. Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, I think it would be fun to look at prospects, and I thought you might enjoy this. I have only one other time really focused in on one position group with the belief that the Chiefs needed to go that route in a draft. And do you know when that was, Josh?
Was it for Patrick Mahomes?
It was.
Okay.
The only other time I've always looked at a few different guys, and you know that's why I've been high on certain prospects and really low on some other ones.
Right.
Shout out to me being really wrong about Juan Thornhill and really right about Breland Speaks. But you know, the only time I've ever thought, okay, the Chiefs need to go a certain direction was the 2017 draft, where the season had ended the way it had, albeit, ugly. And there was just a lot of chatter about the Chiefs maybe being ready to, okay, Alex isn't the guy. They might move on. So what I did is I reviewed, it wasn't just Mahomes. I mean, it was, I think, between 8 to 10 quarterbacks in that draft, maybe more closer to 8. And so then I wrote about them individually. Mahomes happened to be the one I did first. And then I ranked them, and it was a lot of fun. And so I'm going to do that this year. And if we have results that are remotely as positive as the last time I did this, that means the Chiefs are going to draft the next Willie Roaf with this pick somehow. So I'm excited.
I'm really, really interested in, obviously, our conversation after you look at the film will probably be more instructive in terms of what we should be thinking. But just as a little kind of preamble, because I did 2 mock drafts today. I thought this was really interesting for whatever reason. I was doing a part of 2 mock drafts today with like individual people who cover the team picking for each team, which is, I think, way more interesting than just letting a simulator go on or you make every pick or whatever. And in both of those drafts, neither of them are like out yet, so we're really being vague. But in both of those drafts, I got to the pick at 31, and maybe this is just me being in it for too long, like you said earlier. Maybe you're cannonballing into the pool right now, and man, my fingers are pruny. Like, I have been in this pool for a long time. But I've gotten to 31 most of the time, and I've looked at the tackles, and I've said, you know what? I don't feel like there is one guy from kind of this second tier. It's something we talked about this with Tucker on the show last night, and we talked about it with Jordan. Like, I'm not sure that there's a guy at 31 who's going to be there at 31 where I say, oh, well, this is a severe upgrade over the guy who will be there at 45 or 50 or maybe there at 63. And I'm curious to see if you have somebody stand out as basically being kind of the clear-cut 4th guy even out of that group, because I've seen a lot of different fluctuations at this point.
Right, and that's what I'm excited about. I think from what I've heard so far, and this is the great thing for me, there are a lot of great draft resources out there. Obviously, what Dane Brugler does with The Athletic is, I mean, it's called The Beast for a reason. I've actually avoided reading that in terms of I don't want to sully my own opinions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a real risk, I think, with especially when I reference draft Twitter. Let me just say, anyone who participates a great deal in draft Twitter, as someone who's kind of on the outside looking in, there's a real risk of groupthink there because outside opinions or opinions that go against the grain just get mocked to death. Not as in mock drafts.
Right.
But as in, it's just constant. And I think because of that, you tend to see a lot of reports that I think people don't do it intentionally, certainly. But if, like, you've read 3 different scouting reports written by people you respect on, say, a tackle, right? And they all universally praise his feet, you can't really help yourself but go in there looking for those great feet.
Yeah, sure.
And quite often, when we're looking for something, we'll find it. Yeah. And that last sentence there, I think sums up way too much of analysis, including my own at times. Yeah. But that's for another day. But if you're looking for something, you'll find it. And what I like to do is kind of go in unsullied. I mean, the Arrowhead Pride guys do great work. Dane does great work. Ryan Tracy does great work. But I try to avoid it as much as possible, at least with the ones that I'm looking for. At least positions I'm looking for, because I respect those guys so much. So I'm excited. I get to go in this, like you said, I'm cannonballing into the pool while everyone else is like, if I get out right now, I could really get a pizza or something.
Right. I'm definitely sunburnt right now, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here with the basketball going to the deep end like, guys, dunk contest? Huh?
Right.
And it's going to be great. I'm going to annoy people. I'm kind of excited for it.
The one other thing, and this is more something else I think we can talk about before you get into the individual pieces of it. It's also just something when I've looked at, and this is also just now an obscene number of draft boards, and You know, like we can talk about the edge class and how much I think Brett Veach wants to take another edge and how likely I think that ultimately is, or the wide receiver class and a guy, really a number of those guys who could be there in that round. Like, whoa, what if X, Y, or Z guy falls an extra 5 spots and he's there at 31? The one thing that frustrates me, or that I'm nervous about, is the fact that you're going into a draft with a glaring weakness. Like I could really give or take Austin Blythe. I could have given or taken Austin Ryder, and I probably could have given or taken some other professional center named Austin. It wouldn't have really moved the needle for me. But I'm really glad they signed one of those dudes, because it doesn't feel mandatory that they find a center in the first couple of rounds. I really wonder, and this also might depend on how deep you go into the draft class of the tackles. I wonder if they feel like there's somebody at 31 they're really confident in, or if they think, you know what, we're going to find our Lucas Niang of this year, somebody who opted out last year, or somebody who maybe had an injury a couple of years ago, or something later on that doesn't force us to draft a certain position at 31. Just because I hate being forced to draft the position like that, because you might be missing out on the best player on the board, and you might be really settling for lineman 4 or 5 who maybe shouldn't have gone until later. Again, those are all in vague enough terms now that I'm not sure it's worth anything, but I am curious how you felt about that to this point. Also knowing that Okung and Villanueva are both still technically out there.
Right. I think one advantage the Chiefs had with Niang is they thought they had time, you know?
Yeah.
And Andy Reid, generally speaking, with important positions, it seems like you'll often see them do things a year in advance. And that's one of the luxuries you have with a roster that's largely set. And you kind of alluded to this, like not having glaring needs headed into the draft. When you are pretty set, you know you're a Super Bowl contender, you're comfortable with the team you've got, you can draft for needs not this year, but next year or the year after. And I think that's what they were doing with Lucas Niang. You know, there was a lot of talk, you know, maybe he'll move inside to guard, that kind of stuff. And you and I even chatted about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think with Lucas Niang, that was an acknowledgement on their part that half a decade of elite on one side and good on the other side tackle play is rare.
Yeah.
Like this is the exception, not the rule. Guys staying pretty much healthy every year, especially Schwartz, right? Till last year, he never missed time. Fisher missed games occasionally, but not very often. And I think that was an acknowledgement on their part that this can't last forever. Yeah. We're eventually going to have to replace these guys. They were getting a little long in the tooth regardless. It just is what it is. But they thought they had time. And specifically, I think they thought they had 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And with Niang, great pick for that sort of thing. Super talented. I'm excited to see him at right tackle. I have a hunch that he beats out Mike Remmers for the job, which people can roll their eyes at that. But Remmers played above average, not a lot, but a little above average right tackle all of last year.
Yeah.
And it kept the team from falling apart when they lost Mitch Schwartz. That was important. And I love that they brought him back because it's kind of a, you know, you and I talk about this all the time, the roller coaster thing. You must be this tall to get on the ride. You must be this good to play right tackle for the Chiefs now. That's reassuring. But with him, they had time. Whereas now, they don't. And that's a huge deal when you're talking about rookies along the offensive line being able to play right away. And I think that matters a great deal looking at what they decide to do this year. Like you said, there's Okung and there's Villanueva. Those are the 2 veteran options. The opinions I get on Villanueva vary. I've had a couple people I really respect say, you know, he wasn't great last year, but he wasn't terrible. You know, he's average. I got to tell you, I'd take average at left tackle right now.
Sure.
Then I've had other people say, oh, he's completely cooked. He's garbage. Can't play anymore. I have no idea. I haven't watched him. Haven't charted his snaps. I watched a little, and I was like, I mean, these snaps aren't that bad. I understand that, like, Carl Lawson and a few others did obscene things to him on national television. But how do I phrase this? Fisher generally struggled against elite competition as well.
Yeah.
So if you end up with a guy who is an average player who's going to get beaten by elite guys but can get you there most of the time, it's either that or what? Yeah. Okay? That's my thought on Villanueva right now. Hardly a ringing endorsement. Okung, it's injury stuff, right? He's gotten injured multiple years in a row. I still think they ought to sign one of those guys crud, sign both of them. I don't care. Do something, because you end up in that situation where you don't have that roller coaster guy. You don't have that. We're going to draft a left tackle, and by God, he's got to start. Or we're starting like Keysor Durant or someone who I don't know. So that's kind of where I land on all that is they are put in a more risky position than they generally have been over the years. Even with a really important position like quarterback, they had Alex Smith in place. And you and I one day should do a what if on what would happen if they had started Mahomes in 2017, because I have theories.
Yeah,
I have theories.
Yeah, me too.
Because the offensive line was better than it's been any year Mahomes has been the guy. But again, whatever. I have theories. It worked out awesome the way they did it. Alex had a career year, got himself paid bank in Washington. Good for him. They still played it safe. They gave themselves time. And that's one thing that I keep trying to emphasize to Chiefs fans. In terms of this offseason, a lot of people are upset. And they're not as upset now. I think getting the surprise signing of Jaron Reed, which they got lucky with. I think that helped assuage a few things. Getting a competent center in place, that helped assuage some things. But really, they just dealt with something that is really hard to deal with because there are not good left tackles on the market. It just doesn't happen. They had one, Trent Williams, and they swung big on him and missed. And that puts you in a tough spot. But I would just say to Chiefs fans, welcome to what half the NFL feels yearly. When it comes to the tackle position, more than half, if you're including both tackles. It has been the exception in Kansas City the last 5 years, not the rule. And so I'm nervous.
Well, so there's kind of a two-pronged thing. I think we've ended up covering one of the prongs of it, because I'm just kind of, again, as a pre-conversation before you get into all the prospects. I was going to ask how you feel about it as one part of it. I think you've answered that. The other thing, though, is I'm curious, in as concrete or vague terms as you need to properly answer this, what are you looking for? Whenever you go through, maybe it's 5 to 10 guys, whatever you end up doing, of guys who might be in that 31-ish range, what are you looking for as you're going through their tape?
I actually asked myself this question earlier today, because normally what I would do, I have access to film with NFL stuff. I don't have as much with college stuff. People trade it back and forth. I'm not involved in that. So barring a bunch of people who owe me favors, me cashing them all in tomorrow, I don't see that happening. So charting wins and losses and neutral plays becomes a little more suspect. Because you're not doing it from the right angle. What you can
You're also
do is
not doing it against, it depends on the competition. So the competition level fluctuates so much in college.
And that was the second thing I was going to address there. Your film angle isn't ideal. No, you nailed it. And there's such a fluctuation of quality of competition that you find yourself looking more at traits. And this is one reason why I think it's so hard everyone views offensive line as a safe position. I personally think once you're outside of guys that you view as surefire first rounders, it's not that safe because you're still looking at traits, and you can't. Some guy dominating against Northwestern is very different than them dominating against Alabama. Just two very different things. And plus, that's also a position where the difference between a 20-year-old and a 24-year-old in terms of body development, strength, you don't know what guys are going to fill out. You don't know what guys are going to... It's just tough. So the things I'm going to look for, it's going to be more traits-oriented. Normally, what I do, it's performance-oriented, right? And then I talk about traits alongside the performance to try to project whether that performance was lucky, not lucky, might get better, might get worse. It's a good system. I love it. Can't do it with this. So instead, what I want to do is look at traits, specifically in terms of the Chiefs system. I want to look, foot speed and the ability to actually pass protect. And by actually pass protect, I mean take actual pass pro sets, horizontal, vertical, in which you are actually being asked to defend against an edge rusher on a drop back, preferably out of shotgun. That's rarer than you might think at the college level. And so I want to look at foot speed, and not just foot speed, but technique, whether or not that, is what they're doing equivalent to what they'll be asked to do, or do they show the traits that show that they can do it? And so you're just looking for things like foot speed, punch, arriving on time to your marks when you're asked to get out in space, that sort of stuff. It's going to be a trait-based evaluation and then trying to project whether that works well in the Chiefs system. The biggest thing, though, honestly, and this is going to sound so... I really view evaluating college players, because you can't do like the stuff that you can chart and project that nearly as well, because the problems you laid out and I laid out, some of it is just you look and you see it. You know what I mean? And that sounds ridiculous, but you can see, especially like with tackles, you can see what happens when they get their hands on an edge rusher. Are they freezing him in his place? You know, are they just stopping him in his tracks? Are they clearly powerful? Chiefs fans, think of Willie Roaf, right? Is he just freezing a guy in place and clearly more powerful? Or does he get moved? Is he easier to toss off balance? You can just see these things, and you have to trust that part much more with college evaluation than with pro evaluation. And that is why it's so hard to evaluate college players.
This is an additional thing where the answer may just be no. But do you care about arm length at all? Because the thing that I find interesting about it is something that I still don't feel like I totally understand. I understand the difference. If you've got a 5-inch differential from your arms to another prospect's arms, I understand where that comes in. But it really does seem like that there has been historically an Andy Reid sort of cutoff. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's out there. In fact, former friend of the show who's now dead to the show is the one that did the math on it, and I hate crediting him, but he's the only one I've seen do that math, so I can't credit anyone else. It really bums me out. But it does seem like there's some sort of cutoff line. I don't know. Is that something that you look at before you watch the tape, or something maybe you look at afterwards, so you're not looking for sure? I don't know. How are you gonna handle that? Do you care at all?
I don't care. And if I end up wrong, I end up wrong. What I am doing, I tend to, and this is where the work, even of people who are dead to you, is important in part because they're attempting to project what they think the Chiefs will do.
Right.
I'm writing what I think the Chiefs should do.
Yeah.
And I think having a cutoff, like a hard line cutoff for arm length, unless that cutoff is 31 inches or something, and even then, well, no, that's pretty short arms in terms of a tackle. I think having a hard line cutoff is stupid.
Yeah.
I think you look at a player, can he get it done? It's kind of like, some people saying, we'll use an example of Mahomes, and you don't see this type of thinking anymore. And I think Mahomes is a big reason why, as well as some of the other guys who have had success in the pros now, that they're becoming more and more flexible. The difference between how, ad-libbing guys are seen now and guys who don't necessarily utilize the perfect form, the perfect technique, like with footwork, etc., like a quarterback. The difference now, if you want to know how it's so different, think about like how Zach Wilson might have been perceived 5 years ago versus now.
Yeah.
And I think guys like Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, guys that are succeeding in unique ways, I think that's a big deal. So, but I'll use Mahomes as an example, maybe before this revolution, right? There were people that would say, no, his footwork's a mess. And then, boom, move on.
Right.
That's ridiculous because you're asking yourself, well, why do we care about footwork? We care about footwork because it, generally speaking, messes with velocity and accuracy. So if a guy's footwork is a mess, but he's still consistently got great velocity and is very accurate, who cares?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for me with arm length. If you've got a guy whose arms are 2 inches shorter than another guy's, but he's consistently playing really well, why do we care about arm length? Well, we don't want defenders being able to get inside their pads and bull rush and long arm through them, things like that. If it's a guy that's not really happening to him, like ever, who cares?
Yeah.
And that's obviously matters with quality of competition. And that's, again, the college issue. But for me, I'm not going to look at that. I'm going to assume the guys that are entering the draft as offensive tackles have at least 33 and a half inch arms.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it just becomes a matter of an inch. And that just doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. You heard it here first. Seth doesn't think adding or subtracting an inch is that big a deal. Like it just doesn't really move the needle.
Well, my real opinion, which if you think of the whole thing, it's when you've already got so many inches, it just doesn't matter.
Right, of course. Yeah.
I cannot believe you got me to say that. Oh, The brand is hurt.
Yep. Nope. We're gonna have that's a liner. We're gonna have a clean cut of that, and I gotta go. I'm gonna see if I can get to a trash can because I gotta barf. And if we were a little later,
I let you goad me into saying that. I'm weak.
If we would have gotten a little farther into this segment before you would have said that, I would have ended it right there. We could have just thrown the break and moved on. But it's still relatively early by our standards. But also, yes, funny and gross.
Yes, that's kind of my that's my sweet spot of humor.
Yeah, it really is. You mentioned the piece you've got up on The Athletic right now, and we've covered all of this ground in one form or another over the last several weeks because it's not a whole lot has changed over the last several weeks. But and we've also, we've talked about the void being left at left tackle at this point. But upon further review, is there anything new that came to the surface for you looking back at the Austin Blythe signing and the Jarran Reed signing, maybe even Kyle Long or Joe Thuney?
I think just for me, viewing them all in their entirety, in the moment, because of the big disappointment when they didn't land Trent Williams, then how slowly a few things shaped up after Thuney was signed right away. It really was easy, like walking in, it's like, man, they didn't do anything. This is a disaster. They're in a lot of trouble, right? And I think it depends on who you talk to, because there's still people that believe that they're in a ton of trouble, and maybe they are. Who knows? But what surprised me is when I looked at it all from 5,000 feet in the air in its entirety, how few big needs they have. Which that surprised me because I really felt like it was different. The left tackle thing's a big deal. I would argue to most people, they should have been prepared for this. Come on. They thought Fisher was entering the final year of his deal. I have no idea. I've never talked to Brett Veach about this, but given Fisher's age, I'd be willing to bet that what they would have done had he not gotten injured, he probably would have been extended prior to this final year of his contract. Added a couple years, lowered his cap hit that way. It just didn't work out that way because he got injured. Was it February yet? It was the AFC Championship game.
It would have been towards the end of January.
Yeah, it's just the worst possible time for an injury like that. And in the final year of his contract, they literally couldn't keep him on the roster, and there was no magic to be done with the contract because it's in his last year. You can't sign a guy to a contract extension not knowing how his rehab will go. There was nothing they could do about it. And I would just continue to push. And I really have hammered in on this a lot because I don't think people realize this. It was just one of those things that just is unfortunate at a position that's incredibly hard to replace.
Yeah.
It's much easier to replace a wide receiver than it is a tackle. Just because, at least if you're talking like an average guy or an above average guy, because there just aren't that many guys walking around that are 6'6" and 315 pounds and can move. There's a lot of guys who are 6 feet tall and really fast. And so once you take a look from 5,000 feet in the air, you've got that left tackle gaping hole. But when you look at the offensive line, I'm very comfortable with Thuney, Blythe, and whoever wins between LDT and Long at right guard. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm actually very comfortable with right tackle. With Remmers, who we know is an average guy, who isn't going to hurt you at right tackle, and might even help you a little bit. And Lucas Niang, if he beats him out, all the better.
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'm pretty comfortable with their linebackers being Anthony Hitchens and Willie Gay. They need some depth there, but I'm pretty comfortable with that. Comfortable with their cornerback group, although, Bashad Breeland, I keep feeling like he's just been re-signed.
Yes, 100%. I've said that on this show. I feel like in the back of my head, I believe that he is a member of the Chiefs again.
And then he's not.
But he's not. It's not happened.
It feels like inevitable, though. The Chiefs are going to go up to him and say, look, man, here's a 1 year, $3 million deal. It's a lot of money. I know it's not a lot of money for competent cornerback play, but come on. Until then, I'm not super comfortable with the cornerback room, but I don't completely hate it. Had they not brought back Ward as well, I still think they need more high-end talent there. Yep. If they bring in Breeland, I'm comfortable with it. Safety room, I'm really comfortable with. Basically, I was surprised how much I was comfortable with on the roster.
Yeah.
After an offseason that felt like a disaster.
Can I be not necessarily an alarmist, because I don't really think this position is going to make or break the team either way.
Do it.
But I think we're giving a lot of credit, I think, to Willie Gay as being like, he's just going to be the number 2 backer next year, and he and Anthony Hitchens will be the guys on the field most of the time. You'll have a little Ben Neiman, maybe add some depth and everything. I also really like Willie Gay. Like, I was excited when they drafted him. I was excited after, reading your film review about him, and I wanted him on the field sooner. Everyone probably at this point knows all of those things. But I do think that he might be the guy that we are overextending over the course of an offseason. We always have a guy like that, right? Say, well, next year he's going to take a jump. Whenever those jumps aren't always guaranteed, and we just got so little of it last year. Like, the smallest. We didn't get a taste. We got a smell from, like, the other side of the street for, like, an apple pie that was sitting out on a windowsill, like a Tom and Jerry cartoon. I don't know. I'm not necessarily hitting the panic button, but I do think Willie Gay is getting. Honestly, he and Lucas Niang both are getting draft slot and like team confidence, even though we haven't seen much from either of them. Literally anything on the NFL level for Niang, I guess. But I guess I'm also buying into the Niang hype enough myself that I'll be nervous if that's wrong. But also, you mentioned that's a legit competition with him and Remmers.
Yeah,
right now there's not a veteran linebacker for Willie Gay to compete with. It's just him and Anthony Hitchens.
Absolutely, and that's an awesome point. A lot of my stuff with Lucas Niang, I like him. I liked him when they drafted him, and so I think he does get a bit of a bump from that, right?
Yeah.
He clearly has. If you watch his college stuff when he's healthy, he clearly has great feet for a guy his size.
Yeah,
and he's strong. He's big. I think he's got potential to be a good one. The big thing with him is the Remmers issue that they've got a right tackle that played the vast majority of last year and played pretty well.
Yep.
Before, that whole thing in February.
Right. You're right.
And so provided they don't ask him to play left tackle with a completely depleted offensive line against an awesome pass rusher, I think he'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I think they learned that.
Yep.
So the difference with Willie Gay Jr., I think, is a really good thing to point out by you that they really did not get him on the field much. And just when it seemed like they might, he got hurt. And I think he is getting he's kind of getting that there's still some secrecy there bump. And to use the smell analogy that you gave, he's getting the smell benefit in food that smells great. Until you taste it, you're not going to know.
Right.
But he's clearly really athletic. He's clearly really physical. I think he deserved to be on the field more.
Yep.
And I think Spagnuolo is just really into his smart linebackers. And, man, they got to know the system up and down, back and forth. Kind of like the, Andy Reid with wide receivers sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I've convinced myself successfully that an offseason will be enough to resolve that. Because otherwise it'll be Hitchens and Ben Neiman, and I have different feelings about that.
Yeah. I am more the optimist, I think, on Willie Gay than what I'm about to say, but there's also I haven't heard a single human being who talks about the Chiefs mention that maybe Willie Gay is Dorian O'Daniel drafted higher. I don't think that's true, and I'm not trying to tell everybody that is going to be true. And honestly, I don't really enjoy being a hater. It's not a whole lot of fun. I don't really want to do it here either. But it just there's still a chance of that because we just don't really know, and there's not really a safety net there. But
right. I would say in the limited sample size we got, his film is different from O'Daniel's. He's more physical, and he looks more comfortable in zone coverage. Yeah. I didn't see any blatant, dude, where are you going snaps in zone coverage. But definitely, being really athletic tends to pop.
Yeah.
And I can show people, anyone who wants to look, I can show you snaps of Dorian O'Daniel that'll make you go, why is that dude not on the field?
Yep.
Which... sometimes I wonder why that dude isn't on the field.
I still don't know the answer. I was wondering if you were going to try to answer that.
That one bugs me. They obviously drafted him with a bigger role in mind than special teams ace. I think he's been really good on special teams.
Yeah.
And occasional, hey, they've got a good running back, so we're going to get you out there and have you play man coverage on that running back. Mm-hmm. I think they drafted him with a bigger role in mind, and I have to assume that it's just the mental side of things that caused Bob Sutton and then Steve Spagnuolo to not trust him. Yeah. So there's a chance that could happen with Willie Gay as well. I just don't want it to. So, right. Yeah, it's a risk, though. I think he's definitely bigger and more physical on tape. And so I think that should help because then you don't end up with 2 strikes against you. Because with O'Daniel, you got to be elite in a lot of areas to stay on the field when you're that undersized.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Okay, very last thing here, then we got to get out of here. I wanted to talk to you about Andy Reid texting pictures of the Lombardi Trophy to Juju Smith-Schuster. I think there are a couple fun takeaways from it. I think there are a couple of serious takeaways from it. What did you think of that story?
One of the fun things, that's not something I pictured Andy Reid doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's hilarious. And I love that about him. I can't believe Juju said no to that. I really can't. Like, that blows my mind. The ability of players to say no to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes this offseason has been a bit of okay, we are still, we're still on planet Earth here. Just because Mahomes
right.
and Reid, recruit someone doesn't mean they'll get them. On the other hand, the other side of things, I would not be at all surprised to see them go after him again next year.
Dude, you're like the 3rd or 4th person that said that as a takeaway. I think that's fascinating. The only other thing that I'm adding to it is that I think we knew this already. I don't think it's necessarily new information, but the Chiefs really wanted Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, that was very real. That was a very legitimate push. Because if you're kind of interested, you're going to let Brett Veach handle it. If you think that it's going to be a weapon that you're going to make look good, Andy Reid asks for his phone number and starts basically sexting him pictures of the Lombardi Trophy. Because it's it has to be borderline erotic, depending on how it's lit. So I think that's kind of interesting just because there was a lot of talk about, would he be a fit? Would the Chiefs even be interested? What are they going to do with a veteran receiver? And Andy Reid was sending Juju pictures of the Lombardi Trophy.
Absolutely. I think you can also have some takeaways about whether or not they think, McCole Hardman or Byron Pringle or Demarcus Robinson can fulfill, some of that X receiver role when it's not Travis Kelce doing it.
Yep.
And that is one thing worth noting. Nate Tice, who does a great podcast with The Athletic, not as great as Times Ours, obviously, but it's good.
Except for us.
Very good. He said that a couple times in response to people saying the Chiefs need an X receiver. One thing he said, he's like, well, they do have one who's like 6'6" and 260 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't, the need isn't as desperate as people think, because Kelce does play that role, but they obviously want someone. There's a reason they went and got Sammy. And so I think you can see that they are less than enthused about their wide receiver room as well.
Yep.
Which I don't know. I personally, I hate to lock myself in on something like this, but I'm gonna. Last year with the draft with all the receivers and stuff, I was a big fan of Justin Jefferson for a variety of reasons, and I'm very rarely right about things, so I always have to say, oh no, I really like that guy who turned out to be good. And then you ignore the bad takes because,
of course,
yeah.
It's Twitter.
I have a similar, I think I really like this guy more than maybe most, although he's rapidly gaining steam. Rashad Bateman is if he started to fall into the 20s, started to drift towards the Chiefs, I'd be like, I think that guy might be really, really good as a pro.
I'm gonna have to send you a link whenever a certain mock draft through a certain series of websites comes out. Because I think you're going to be very happy about it. But I can't say who I picked because it's not out yet.
See, I'm excited.
But it might be a receiver that you like very much, who I was very surprised to see fall into 31.
Man, thank goodness you didn't spoil that.
I don't want to spoil it though.
And so that's just one thought on it, because there's so many talented receivers in this draft.
Yeah.
But if you want a guy to fulfill a specific role, I don't know if Tony or Moore or one of those or Tooney, however you say it, those smaller guys. Is that the way to go? I don't know. Although Bateman's not a huge guy either. The problem is, because this year they're going in with a massive glaring need at one position, there's a reason I'm looking at left tackles, right, and not receivers. If Fisher were healthy, I would say I'd be looking at receivers, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because it's a great draft for it too. I kind of, the receiver thing, if it weren't for the left tackle issue, that would be so much fun. Because, can you imagine if, all it takes is one or two teams, because of, Devontae Smith's size, liking Bateman and Waddle better, And can you imagine, like, if the Chiefs traded up to, like, I don't know, like 23 and drafted Devontae Smith? Like, just how much, just the explosion that would occur.
Yeah,
on draft Twitter.
And I would enjoy it. It would be like the explosion last year, but it would be justified.
And so, like, it's one of those things where it would be really cool to see, or like if Waddle falls that far and the Chiefs grab him, and everyone's like, oh, well, a fast guy, that's weird.
Right.
Because Waddle's incredibly fat, man. I was watching this film. He's got that, like, McCole Hardman, Tyreek Hill gear that is spooky.
I do like that.
I want, everyone would prefer something like that, but it's a tough thing to do when you've got a glaring hole at left tackle. So the big thing I'm going to be looking at, like you said, I'm going to be looking at tiers and trying to figure out exactly where guys I really like would go. And like, is there someone that I think, like, what do the tiers look like? Is the second tier big enough to where I'm like, you could maybe do that in the second round?
That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know is does your, I don't know if this is the right number, would you be happy enough waiting until your 7th or 8th tackle at the end of the second round as opposed to having to take the 5th one at 31 and then maybe you give Rashad Bateman at 31 or maybe you keep an edge, I don't know.
And it's all going to depend on those tiers, and that's what I'm most excited to write about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to review film. I'm going to probably write about 1 or 2 of them at a time, just kind of what I liked, what I didn't like, and then when I'm done with all of it, draft in tiers and then give a strategy based on that, right? Like, because if there's, let's say I watch and I decide, you know what? I know everyone's saying it's just these 2, but I really think there's like 5 guys in the top tier. Mm-hmm. Then that's a guy you probably get a chance to draft one of them. If I say there's 2 guys in the top tier and then there's 2 guys in the second tier and then there's a huge drop off, then it's like, you really need to take that second tier guy. Right? But if there's 8 guys in the second tier, there's just so many directions this could go, Josh.
I'm very excited for it. I got to go. We got to get out of here. I'm very excited for that. That'll be in the Chief of the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com or bit.ly/Seth Hates Money. You can also read his new piece up on The Athletic, and a new Time Czars with Seth and myself and our friend and colleague Nate Taylor drops tomorrow. Seth, always a distinct pleasure. Enjoy diving in to the film, and I'm very, very excited to see what comes of it.
Hey, me too, man. Thanks for having me.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts. Joshua Brisco.
I got 2 nuggets. I'm happy.
Rudy got 2 nuggets, everybody.
I got my 2 nuggets
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Rudy had 2 nuggets. Rudy now has really 1 nugget. Like maybe 1.5. Aaron Gordon's nice.
You could say 2. It's just one looks like a chicken nugget and the other one's just been ripped apart into little tiny pieces. So like technically the pieces are there for one, but like
at this
doesn't look
point,
good.
you've got a gold nugget and a McNugget right now.
Yeah.
That's kind of where you're at. We
Honestly,
have to.
I'd take a McNugget. I wish we had a McNugget.
I would also like a McNugget right now. Ideally more than one. I haven't had some chicken McNuggets in a minute. I would like some. McDonald's, you want to sponsor a radio show?
Sounds good. I'm hungry now.
We have to talk about Rudy's Nuggets. He wasn't here last night. I'll open the door for you here, Rudy. Actually, this happened last night.
Yes.
And maybe
Yes,
after the
yes,
show. Can you set up what has happened? Can you talk for just a second about how your Nuggets have been absolutely obliterated, really, these last couple of nights?
Yeah, I mean, last night especially just because, losing to Golden State's not a huge deal. Sometimes Steph Curry's just kind of Steph Curry. And then you see Jamal Murray just shatter his ACL into little tiny pieces, like somebody just grabbed it and just started ripping and just pull chicken. You know the thought behind it, right? How you get a chicken breast and you just rip it off. Somebody did it to Jamal Murray's knee. Somebody just grabbed his knee and started just ripping the ACL off.
It's probably not as tasty as chicken.
Well, it's Canadian, so it's not American. It's a Canadian chicken. It's a different flavor.
Is it?
What? I have no idea. Jamal Murray is Canadian. I don't know. It's a rough time for all of us.
I mean,
the Nuggets season's over. I've come to terms with it.
This is the thing.
It was probably already over before, anyways. But there's like that little bit of like glimmer, that little bit of hope, right? Like, hey, if LeBron and Anthony Davis aren't healthy and just you get a couple breaks go your way, yeah, you can make it to the finals. And it's just not happening now.
For the first time this year, I will say I hope. What are you laughing at?
Chaotic Warrior on Twitch commented, Dan Campbell was in Denver last night?
Pretty good.
Pretty much.
I think for the first time this year, I kind of hope that Jokic wins MVP. Because I kind of want Rudy to. What I wanted Rudy to have.
Something.
I kind of want you to have something.
Just have something. Yeah.
What I really wanted you to have was a good season that ultimately falls short at the hands of the Phoenix Suns. Both teams at full health, sending you into a devastating offseason. But now that your season is essentially ended in mid-April, I want there to be something for you to hang your hat on.
Yeah.
As the Suns meet the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals and the Celtics get bounced out of their G League conference playoffs, and the Nuggets have a nice little season, and their fat point center wins MVP.
He's slim now, though. He's slim Jokic.
He's still. I'll say he's
Slokic.
He is one of those.
It fits for a variety of reasons.
He is definitely Nikola Slokic. Absolutely.
He's both slim and slow.
He's flabby.
Can't argue with it.
That flabby. He's not fat. That's not fair.
He's flabby. He's averaging 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists a game.
It's huge for flabby basketball players and really people everywhere.
The guy is out. He's remarkable.
Somebody's got. He needs like Travis Kelce's barber in the worst way, though. He's got to do.
He has no idea what to do with his hair.
He needs a little length on top.
Yeah.
He needs a little, even just a better face, something, man. I don't know if he could grow a beard. I feel like if he could, we'd probably know it by now. I think Jokic could be a star. You know what happened to Gordon Hayward once he got to the league?
He had the glow up.
He had the glow up.
He glowed up.
Jokic needs a little bit of a Barber glow up, and then I think he's the MVP.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Because also most of the MVP candidates have been hurt.
That.
Like literally all of them, right? Embiid missed a
basically.
bunch of time. LeBron's missing a bunch of time. Harden is hurt. Obviously, KD was hurt for a long time. Anthony Davis has been hurt for a long time.
Harden was also fat at one point.
Harden was also on another team at one point.
Also huge. That news, I mean. Beards, if I ask you right now, who's your MVP? Noting that Jokic has been healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who would you say? Who would you
probably
vote for?
At this point, probably Jokic.
Who would your
everybody else
Who would
has
your
been hurt.
second?
Embiid.
I don't care.
He's gonna
I
miss
don't
a lot
care
of
about
time.
any
I know, but who else?
asterisks for
No,
why we get it. I just want him to get it.
Beard, the reason I was asking the question was genuinely because I was hoping that you would have an answer.
Giannis, maybe. Giannis is going to be
You
the
know
one
what,
that's going to be
Beards?
because he wants
You know
to
what,
go.
Beards? You're right. It should be a split award this
Get
year
the
between
bleep
Devin
out of
Booker and Chris Paul. I agree with you. Great point.
Second. Giannis for second.
We've got 3 hours tomorrow. We'll talk to Danny Welniak of KCTV5 tomorrow night. Probably somebody else. I don't know. We'll figure it out whenever we get there. Thanks to Kevin James and Seth Keysor. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.